So we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We appreciate everybody being here tonight and joining us. Thanks to the council for being here. We do have a few missing. Councilman Allen has asked to be excused tonight. Councilman White should be here a little later, so excuse him if he gets here. As far as getting started, we've asked Councilman Roosevelt to give us a prayer, and then we'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet as citizens of Roosevelt City and especially as a council. We hope and pray Thy Spirit will attend us as we discuss the needs of Roosevelt City. We're grateful for this area we live in. We're grateful for the members of this city, Roosevelt City. We're grateful for all their service and efforts within the city limits, and hope and pray that will bless them. We're grateful for this land and the freedoms we enjoy. We ask you to bless those that are serving in the military, watch over and protect them. Please bless the leaders of this country, help us maintain our freedoms. We're grateful again to thee, and we say in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. So, to begin with, we have our minutes that we need to approve from the last meeting. Has everyone been able to look at those? And are there any amendments or corrections?
I move we approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Roosevelt and a second by Councilman Cloud. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is unanimous. We do have our public comment period tonight. We have a few here. I'm wondering if anybody would like to take opportunity to address the council. If you do, please come to the mic and state your name, and you can have up to 3 minutes. Are there any that would like to take that opportunity tonight? Ms. Robinson? Seeing none, we'll proceed with our meeting. We do have some council appointments that we will do, but you know what, let's go to the recognitions first, and then we can do the council appointments next. So we have some VIPs here tonight, so we want to get to that first. We do have with us Supervisor Special Agent Desmond Grant. That you?
That's right.
Okay, Desmond, we'll go ahead and turn some time over to you and for some special recognition for one of our officers. So.
Clint, you want to come up here, bud? Best way to do this, so we're not in everybody's way. I don't know Clint personally, but I've had numerous conversations with individuals who have worked with him. I supervise the FBI's Crimes Against Children Task Force here in Salt Lake City, which includes kidnappings. I'd like to recognize some work that Clint has done in a case that was very significant to Roosevelt and out here into Duchesne and Uinta County. So, Clint, don't know you, brother, but at the end of the day, we don't get a lot of opportunities to recognize the good work law enforcement does, specifically here in Roosevelt. Efforts that actually resulted in a successful resolution of a kid being saved that was kidnapped here from Roosevelt. I've worked cases where that's not always the case. Back in March of 2022, for those of you that may not know, a 13-year-old girl went missing here from Roosevelt, got picked up by a trucker out of Florida, and eventually located with the efforts that Clint had specifically done in this case, tracking down information that was helpful in leading to the successful arrest of the individual in Cheyenne, Wyoming. This award is actually from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Wyoming, and the AG's office there for all of your efforts that resulted in that 13-year-old being saved. Nice work. The FBI is essentially not sexist. We cannot accomplish this mission without you guys. So, and that's not to be pandering in any way. So, because these cases don't happen with that. So, appreciate all the efforts. On behalf of the FBI and people in that Wyoming, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate all your help, brother. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Officer Robinson. not to embarrass you anymore, but Grant, wasn't he instrumental in some legislation that got passed recently in the state? Could you?
Nothing.
So thanks for all you do. I really appreciate
Thank
it. And all of the Roosevelt Police Force, we have your back. I hope you know that. And we appreciate all that you do. So thank you.
Thank you for letting us take some time here and meetings, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
You should be proud, Mrs. Robinson.
We are. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right. Starting out with the good stuff. So the committee appointments, we do have a few names to present to the council tonight. Sunshine, you're gonna have to help me out if I butcher any of them. But Melissa Jurgensen and Dana Ross, we present them to be appointed to the Arts Subcommittee of the Arts and Rec Committee. And Mike Colley to the Trails, or Recreation Subcommittee, of the Arts Parks and Rec Committee. And so we'd suggest or present those three names for approval from the council. Any questions or concerns about those individuals? Might have to go into closed session if there's any concerns.
None, Mayor, I move we approve.
We have a motion to approve,
Second.
second by Councilman Flower. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And will you send out a letter to them? Awesome. Thank you. We do have one more seat open for the sports subcommittee. Yeah, so if you guys know anybody, we can use one more individual there. Next is our public hearings. We have a few of them tonight. We're going to turn the time over to Drew. So this has it on our agenda that going through all the public hearings, and that's fine, but we can come back into open session and actually make an action item out of that. So I suggest that's what we do on each one of these. So Mrs. Bake, that's probably why you're here,
Yes.
representing that guy.
Yeah.
Drew, and then explain it, and then we'll ask for motion to go into the public hearing.
Okay, so this parcel of property that is up for annexation, 2.7 acres just on the outskirts of Roosevelt on the south side. To the east is Roosevelt City existing, and south is the county on State Street here. It is passed through Planning and Zoning Commission with no concerns. Discussion on sewer eventually, if it could be there. We are doing some preliminary discussions with the engineers right now to see if there's grade eventually out that way. So, but for now, it is septic system. So with that, if there's any questions for me.
Any questions?
I move we go into public hearing concerning the annexation of this property.
Okay, we have a motion to go into public hearing. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Power. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll consider ourselves in a public hearing. Are there any that would like to speak to this annexation petition? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to go back into regular session.
I move we go to regular session and make this an action item. Do I need to do that too in the motion?
I don't think you, well, not necessarily an action.
Okay, just
there.
Move back into regular session.
Okay, have a motion.
Second.
Second by Councilman Howard. Wake up, Councilman Barry. All in favor? Okay, so we'll consider ourselves back into regular session.
Motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, motion by Councilman Barry, second by Councilman Rosenberg. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
You might,
motion passes.
Mayor, just might add that this isn't unusual. We're not doing anything out of the norm here. We've talked about it last time, but I just want to make sure people are aware this is not anything out of the norm as long as they're adjacent to Roosevelt City. We do this quite often.
I will make one comment though. My home and property is the northernmost point of Roosevelt City, and now Mr. Bank's property is the southernmost point of Roosevelt City, so good job.
He made sure as far away from you as he could be.
Good observation. Next public hearing item is the fee schedule amendments for the Aquatic Center, Clearview's Animal Shelter, Municipal Airport. We have several that will present. We'll start with Edwin, then we'll go to Dustin, and then Rose, and then I'll present for the Municipal Airport. So, Edwin.
So for the aquatic center, it's actually just a minor adjustment, a clarification more or less. You can actually see on the rate sheet there that there is no break for military, veteran, or first responder for a discount to the punch passes. Currently right now, $4 right there, you times that by 10, that'd be 40 right there. And it wouldn't be a break off of a 10% off of that 55. So it would actually cost more with the 10% discount on the punch passes up with an adult. So what we'd be doing here is making a military, veteran, and first responder punch pass price that would give them a better rate right there to thank them for their service right there. So really, it's just to clarify and help make sure they get that break in all the areas aside from just the daily admission.
Yeah, I think that's great that you considered that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Edwin on that? Okay, thanks, Edwin. Aaron. Dustin.
All right, well, tonight we wanted to update our field use agreement there at Constitution Park and Central Park as well for the baseball and softball fields. We've put a lot of time into this. We've done a lot of homework into this. We've done a lot of research, looked into other cities. So we've done our due diligence on this. We want to get it right. We want to be fair, and we want to encourage, tournaments to come in. So we feel that we bring a proposal that is awesome and it's good. So that's kind of where we're at. Speed schedule.
Councilman
Working 12, so I do like the way it looks. Appreciate you guys' work on it.
I was gonna ask, so before, I know there were some phone calls, it was like $25 a team, $50 a team, and so you went just with $100 a bill per day.
Yes, we thought that would be a little bit easier. Also, it didn't cost so much for big tournaments to come in.
Sure.
But we decided to go $100 bill. And so if the tournament comes in and they only want to use one bill, they pay for that bill. They want to use all 6 of them, soon to be 10. New sports complex, they'll pay for that field usage. And it'll help us cover some costs.
Makes sense.
It's very similar across the board to see what most cities are operating in. Teams coming in. That's some great experience too. With the Rumble tournament that just came in to kind of evaluate that. It's really huge in putting these fees together.
I did a very detailed cost analysis of what it really cost us, to run a tournament like that. And I think this proposal helps us a lot. I think we need to be smart about these tournaments and what we're capable of doing. We're willing to do all this stuff, but we still need to be smart. Capable. Currently, we have 2 full-time employees at the parks. The parks department is inside on this, so that was considered capable of doing. We're more than willing to do it in a tournament we want. This is favorable for both sides.
Appreciate all the work that you put into it. Do we have any questions or?
No, I think it looks great.
Great, thank you. Rose? I hope the public is memorizing all of these dates.
So this one is to alter the adoption fees to include the spay and neuter rate you would have met. So essentially, we would like to alter the animals prior to them leaving to the shelter rather than the spay and neuter deposit that we were doing. Because unfortunately, a lot of the adopters are not spaying and neutering them. So we're hoping that this will solve that problem. And so previously with Utah code, they could get a Class C misdemeanor and $1,000 fine if they did not alter that animal. That is no longer the case. The only thing we can do is take back the animal if we really wanted to go to that trouble. So we're kind of just left with a say they'll do it and then they never do. So we need to find a way to make sure that they're getting these animals fixed. So basically, the table at the bottom shows the cost analysis for it. the cost that would be to spay and neuter each dog. So to get the total number of the average cost for a spay and neuter, I went over our 2022 stats and a price list from UNIVET with the shelter discount to determine an average cost of spay and neuter to kind of try to figure out the best number to go with there. And then, so the recommended adoption fee for the dogs would be $180 and then the cats $115. And that would include all their vaccines, their spay and neuter, their chip, and their rabies vaccine as well.
And where are they currently at, Rose?
So currently, it varies. So if it's a puppy, it's $42 plus a $60 neuter deposit. However, they have to pay for the neuter out of pocket, and then we refund that $60. Adult dogs, $35, adult cats, $30, and then kittens, $35.
How do you think this will affect your adoption rate?
I really think it'll slow down at first, but overall, I think it will be a lot better because there's a lot of adoptions that have been returned as well. And a lot of them could be fixed by spay and neuter. Like, for example, if you have 2 unaltered males, they're bound to fight. So if we have them fixed beforehand, that eliminates that. So I think we'll have a lot less adoption returns as well. And then, personally, if I were going to adopt, I'd want an animal already fixed because they're already going to have to pay out of pocket for that spay or neuter. And getting them spayed or neutered through us will actually save them money because we have a shelter discount.
Any questions? Okay.
No,
Question. So they won't be able to go home until they've been spayed or neutered, right?
So we can work with it in our policies. So I contacted the Vernal Shelter to see how they do it because they operate very similar to what we're wanting to do. So what they normally do is if they can get a spayed or neutered before they leave, they do. If not, they sign the contract and then pick them up right after they get spayed and neutered. So I have it scheduled with UNIVET that we'll have 4 to 5 dogs spay and neuters per week. So say you go and adopt a dog on Tuesday, or appointment's Thursday, we bring them Thursday, and then you can pick them up from us that same Thursday or Friday. So all fees will be paid up front, and then they get to pick up the dog that day. The biggest thing is out-of-state adopters. If they're coming from out-of-state, they may want to use their own vet. So if that's the case, we can get a vet reference from them and make sure that they have a date scheduled and that they will bring that dog to the spay and neuter appointment.
Okay, I like that.
And so, just a follow-up question, you might have already answered it, but so you're not spaying and neutering these animals until you have a commitment for adoption?
So, kind of. So we'll have 4 to 5 each week. So if we only had 2 adoptions that week, that's only 2 appointments. We can bring 2 of our other dogs that haven't got a potential adopter yet, spayed and neutered, and then they'll already be spayed and neutered when an adopter comes in. So what we'll do is a lot of the dogs we get, about half of them, I think last time I looked, it was about 40% go to rescue. So if they're already altered, we'll try to keep them in our shelter so they get adopted and we make those funds back and then put unaltered ones up for rescue, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we're still making that money back.
Yeah, because I just think could be a significant cost of ours that may not be able to be recouped unless and so that, are we committed to the vet to bring 4 animals a week? Is that what we're getting the rate?
Not necessarily committed, but right now I have it scheduled for about 4 to 5 per week, but that's flexible. We can schedule more if needed or less if needed. A lot of this we'll take it as we go, and when we know better, we'll do better, and then kind of get a feel for it and see what we need to do and where we need to change it.
Got another question now. So if a dog has been picked up by a shelter because it's wandering and it's trying to breed with all the neighbor dogs, and it's taken in, is it before it's released back to its family, is it going to be spayed and neutered?
So that actually goes over to Utah code. So if it's a stray, so the adoptions are completely separate from the strays. So with Utah code, the first time they come in, you don't have to charge a spay and neuter deposit, but they come in a second time unaltered, they have to be charged a $60 spay and neuter deposit. So that won't change. So basically that works the same as it used to. If they come in a second time and are not altered, we charge them that spay or neuter deposit. And if they go to UNIVET, they deduct it off their bill. If they decide to not alter their animal, they don't have to because it is a choice where they're reclaiming them. It's mostly an incentive for them to get them fixed because a lot of the time when they are wandering, it's because they're altered.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, and if I can note as well, so I did some research on average adoption prices for the dogs and cats. So I just went off HSUs because they are the most common. Normally their dog adoption fees are name your own price to $500, and then the cats are name your own price to $175. So I made sure we're still below that limit to help people start adoptions.
Thanks,
Any other
Bruce.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your time.
The last item on the bid schedule, I believe, is just a $300 fee that we want to charge for the main hangar. I don't know if anybody's been out to the airport lately. From the outside, it doesn't look like a whole lot has changed, but if you go in the main hangar, it looks like a brand new facility. So, anyway, that's been all done. Now the plane's ready to be moved back in, but we wanted to set the rate, monthly rate for those planes. And it was suggested from our airport committee to present the council a rate of $300 a month.
What was it previously?
There wasn't a set. It was kind of just whatever was verbally agreed upon. Handshake.
It's always good.
Not even from, yeah, it was just it was strange. But they did do some research, and we, looked around at what other areas charge, and this is not the highest nor the lowest. It's kind of in between. So, anything else, Ron? Any questions from the council on that? Yeah.
I move we go into a public hearing to discuss the fee schedule amendments.
Okay, we have a motion for public hearing. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Flower. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Don't fall asleep back there. Okay, we'll consider ourselves in a public hearing for comment on the fee schedule amendments. Are there any in the public that has any questions or comments on those? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to move back into regular session.
Regular session.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
Second by Councilman Flower. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consider ourselves back in the regular session. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Clare.
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Before we go to the fiscal year budget approval, let's just give the time back over to Drew, because we do need to assign a zoning to that annexation parcel. So let's go ahead and take care of that before I forget. And then we'll move on to the budget.
Okay, so now that we've approved the annexation, the zone request is an RR1. And that has been brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval as well, and has passed the zoning commission, so we would look for approval from city council for that zone request.
And I would also mention that it has to be an RR1, because you can't have any less than a neighbor and have septic systems.
Yes, for Trent County requirements.
I move we approve the zoning.
Okay, motion to approve the zoning based subdivision as an RR1, correct?
Yes.
We have a second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Flower. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. You're on. We'll take some time over to Rhonda to give us the rundown of the 2024 budget.
Okay, you have a stack of papers in front of you. Thanks for giving me. Amongst those, you have one that has a green on the top that says fiscal year 20 proposed budget summary. And basically you saw this when we had our work meeting on the 6th, and there have been some slight changes to what we're proposing. And those are off to the side. You'll see them highlighted in yellow, the totals. What we're actually doing is increasing the revenues by $556,000 and an overall expenditure increase of $81,000. And then on page 2, there's a little over $7,000 decrease in water fund expenditures, bringing the overall budget to revenues of 10.1 million. And you'll see that of the expenditures, almost $1 million of that is pushing to capital projects. And so speaking of capital projects, you also have in front of you page that goes the other direction, that shows the capital budget summary. I've attached also the capital budget, it's a 3-page there, the update for the 2024. There was one change, in the Parks Department, we did increase, the rubber mulch for the playground because it's quite a bit more expensive than the last time we had gotten an amount, so that went up from 20,000 to 30 due to that price increase. And then there were also a few items that were one adjustment and two additions for the golf course. At the top of page 2, we initially had a fertilizer spreader and a weed sprayer that was like $51,000. It's $27,000 is now what we're budgeting for that piece of equipment. And then the two underneath that are new additions, the reel sharpener and the blade sharpener. Ultimately, between the three of them, it's an additional $20,000. So it's a total of $30,000 that is increased. If you go to the budget summary page, that shows that we have total capital budget of $8.3 million. We'll be transferring $950,000 from the general fund, which means we'll be taking just under $7.4 million from the general sinking funds. The totals have not changed at the top of the next column, showing what our balances are in the accounts and the amount of the capital budgets that's in reserve for future spend, and that's detailed below, is about $2 million. And then the expected spend to finish up fiscal year 23 has gone down a little bit because we actually did do some of that spend already since the last meeting. And most of these numbers are up to date through today. I tried to put as much detail as I could that was up to date in here. So basically, the amount of the sinking fund that would be spent in the current year then would be $5.4 million. And I believe a balance in the sinking fund of a total of $8.3 million. Part of that would be reserved. It's important to understand that just because it's reserved does not mean that it is untouchable if it was deemed necessary to use those funds in another format. You could definitely do that. So that is kind of the update on the budget. Also, I wanted to point out there is another page that looks really familiar to you that you have that has the fiscal or the financial update for this fiscal year, 23. And I wanted you to see this is through today, and the biggest thing is why we increased the budget expectation. So based on what we've seen, we've not seen our June numbers yet. Our budget for this year for taxes was 5.4. And if you remember, we made one increase during the year already because we've seen increases in what we've been receiving. So as of the end of May, we are at just under 5.9. We'll still have June to account for. So trending very good. As Councilman Busenbach had pointed out, we have received 96% of our revenues at 97% of the year gone, but we do have the whole month of June that's not accounted for in here. And we have spent 83% of our expenditures. So. And at the bottom of page 3, it shows that as of right this moment, between the three funds that we have, the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund, we are sitting right now with a $2 million profit. 1.2 million of that will be utilized to cover the shortages of what we've already spent in the capital. We just need to push that over. And then that'll leave it at 811 $100,000 that potentially could also be utilized for capital expenditures in the future. And the last but not least, one you're very familiar with, it's on the joint page because it's still small even there. These are the famous 56 projects from fiscal year 23. Many of them have been completed. I updated the spend in the third column over where it shows where it says spend. I updated that through the current date and shows where we're at. And in the farthest right column, as you're looking at it, it says remaining. Only those that are highlighted are expected to be utilized in the next fiscal budget.
Where's the gun range plan A?
Well,
Plan B.
Plan A was to have a grant, which is potentially very alive, so.
Sure, now, with the gun range, I thought we had 300,000 set aside for the total gun range. Gun range plan B shows 33,000. Just want to double check that number.
Which project is it?
That's project number 45.
Number 45. Actually, 50,000,
Yeah,
and we've spent 16, which was engineering costs.
correct. Did we not have 300 at one time in that budget?
I don't remember having that gun range.
No, yeah.
And the gun range at 300.
It was 300.
Mhm.
Well, that would definitely increase things by $250,000.
Yeah, we did at one time. So that would be something that I would see that we would need to modify.
So we moved that to, and potentially we have moved that to. Yeah, I don't see it moved to the new one already. I thought maybe we had done that, and that's why it had been adjusted. I do not remember there being an adjustment in there, but I will definitely look into that. Yeah, it rings a bell.
The only other thing, just the other question I had is, I know we have Cody here tonight, he's going to present a little later on. We did have at least 400, maybe 800 of ARPA funds set aside somewhere. I don't see that anywhere. If I could just see that, it'd make me feel a lot better.
On the fiscal year 24.
It is at the middle of page 2, 850,000 for downtown revitalization fund.
This one here.
I see ARPA for 23, I don't see any ARPA for 24. Do we not get any?
Well, that's the,
Those capital.
I'm looking at the proposed, I see the ARPA, the second.
Next page.
Right here, Mayor.
yeah, I'm seeing,
3 above the yellow.
oh, I see it now. Revitalization fund. Okay.
Councilman Moodymark, what was your question? I didn't have a question, I was just pointing out where the ARPA was on this, but I didn't.
That's the one that I wanted to see there, so. Excellent. Okay, I just wanted to make sure those two things, I don't see anything else. Do any of the council see anything that might be in this?
No, I'm just excited to get all these things done. It's a lot of work, but a lot of great things.
I did have one other question, I apologize. And Aaron, you might be able to help me with this too. I did have a private conversation with Mike on the fertilizer sprayer. And will that 27,000 cover what he's looking for?
So we've been doing some research on those spreaders, they go anywhere from 20,000 up to 150,000. He did find one that he likes, that will do what we need to do. Originally, he was thinking that $50,000.
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
So he did find one that he's very excited about if we can get. It's a little bit less money.
But it's
that's the
adequate.
It's the one that's in the proposed budget.
And he's comfortable with that.
That's the one he would like. He's on board with it.
Excellent. Those are the only questions I had. Any other questions from the council?
And I would like to address one thing that says camp in our work session, and that's the employee increases. I want to make sure we talk about that one here. But what we've done to address council's concern there is we're proposing a 2% COLA for all employees, so that goes across the board. A 4% market increase. As you know from our study from our 2021, or 2014, 2021, 2023, we found that on average we're about 9% under market. So a 4% to 4.5% market increase depending on the position, and then the step increases that council approved with our step. Not all employees are eligible for steps, but those that are eligible, should they get their positive employee evaluation from their supervisor, they would be eligible for a step. The steps are 2.5% for exempt employees, 3% for hourly employees. All seasonal employees, as we're trying to get those up to market, as you know, some of them are down to $7 an hour. The increase there is $1 per hour. Okay, for those ones. Trying to get those seasonal ones up to compete with, be somewhat competitive, because our seasonal ones just aren't competitive. So that's what we've done to address the concerns we got back in council on.
Now, those that aren't seasonal but work year round, that are part-time, they would be included in which?
They are on the step increases.
Okay.
Yes, and hourly employees, the reason the percentage is different, hourly employees get a 12-year step, exempt employees get a 15-year step. That's on the 15-year steps, they get a lower amount because it's built in for longevity.
All steps are merit-based.
Yes, all steps are merit-based. They must have a positive employee evaluation from their supervisor, and on top it has to be approved by the city manager. So there's two-step verification that the employee has to get for those merit-based increases.
So that gets us back to the 9 that we were hoping for, right? Perfect.
8.5 on the part-time and 9 on the other, or exempt, and then.
Well, the market is a 4% or a 4.5%.
Okay.
So it'd be 9.
Either way.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And there is one other thing, if I can, perfect. 2024 budget, I just like to clarify this for anybody in the public that's not here. If you see the transfer to capital projects, during the budget workshop, that number was about 300,000.
It's less than that.
Less than. So that number there is really what is left over from our revenue to our expenditures, and we use that money to pay for more capital projects. Well, what I'm getting at here, if you look at that for what it really is, that's the excess revenue that we have that we can put in the capital projects. So we are trending in a wonderful direction right now to do more of these capital projects rather than the opposite direction. The more that number shrinks, the more we're looking at, okay, what are we truly cutting? And that number just is trending in the positive direction, which is fantastic. Almost $1 million to put straight into our capital. So, and that's just from our last meeting 2 weeks ago.
Roads.
And roads is exactly what we need. And that's where that money can go. Capital projects, we have quite a bit.
And I do think that I mentioned there's a very good potential that will have a very nice bump this year, almost double what we normally get in B and C road funds. I don't know if that's been passed yet for sure, but it looks like it was probably very.
Excellent. So I really appreciate you working on, first of all, my comments at the work meeting weren't suggestive of employees not deserving those types of raises, but I feel like this is a much better approach. And so thanks for looking at that and breaking it down that way.
I agree.
So, any other questions or comments from the council?
And when we go into public hearing, budget,
Got a motion for public hearing, second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll consider ourselves in a public hearing. Are there any that would like to comment on the 2024 budget?
I move we go back to regular session
Thanks,
and
Don. I was gonna give a little extra time just to see if I could make anyone uncomfortable. We have a motion to go back into regular session. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
aye.
Okay, we'll consider ourselves back into regular session. Seeing no other questions, would entertain a motion to approve the 2024 budget as presented.
I would move we approve the budget as presented
May I make a clarification with the 250
With-
additional?
with the 250,
Let's make it 350. Just kidding.
with the 250 adjustments, my motion.
Okay, I like that. Do you have a second? to that
Second.
motion? Second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks, Rhonda, for presenting that, and Josh, for your hard work. Both of you. That gets us, D, I don't know if it shows on the agenda, but we're gonna go ahead and forego D tonight. We already talked about that. Mike was gonna come and present on some of these needs, but were worked into the budget. We already discussed some of those, the fertilizer and a few things, so. Those are there. We have Alan here, or Lieutenant, Assistant Chief Alan Tucker, for court security agreement.
Yeah, this is just, I don't think we really changed much. This is just the security agreement we have with the court that is in the building here. This is just pretty much the building stuff. When we do security and bailiff, those are charged separately. We haven't had all the individuals anyway. I think it's good to approve.
Grant, do you have any questions on this?
I have reviewed it, not suggesting.
Any questions from the council?
Do we provide the bailiff or?
We provide the bailiff and security, but it's only when they have, it's pretty much just been jury trials.
Okay.
Most of it is done online still. So cost so far to the minimal.
All right. Well, since they've reviewed it, I would move we approve then.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks. Next is a field use agreement. Aaron and Dustin, do you want to come and present that?
All right, so tonight we just wanted to propose a field rental agreement. We feel, again, that this is fair. We definitely learned a lot during a recent tournament that we had here in Roosevelt. And we feel that these fees are fair. Just to kind of go through them really quick, especially the fee schedule. Roosevelt City, it'll be $10 per field per hour for practice and single games. We definitely have a lot of travel teams around. This is where they would pay the fee right there. And then tournament fields per rental per field per day. This fee includes one field prep at the beginning of the day. Field prep includes field dragging, spraying down, and chalking. And that's one per day. Portable fence setup is $20 per field per day if available. Fee may be waived if the tournament directors help set up the fence. Tournament site monitor, if required and available, is $15 an hour per employee needed.
And that is a new fee that we didn't have on there before. We're doing some research. A lot of municipalities are including that as an option where somebody wants to have it beneficial if something happens or goes wrong. So that's an experience that.
Yeah,
This last one. So.
And these fees that you're mentioning are reflected in the fee schedule that we just approved, correct?
And then, again, additional tournament field prep is $50 per day. up to 2 additional field preps per day, and single diamond prep is $25 on each field, so. I don't know, what kind of questions or concerns, Mayor, Council, do you have?
I had a couple, and I think you did a great job. I'm sure it looks good. I just was wondering, on the field prep, it's not outlined here as to what this, I don't know if we need that in the contract. You mentioned that. It also talks about outstanding balance, who monitors that and makes sure that they do that, and then who monitors, do they have to show insurance here, or do they have to show it to you, or, I was just curious kind of the procedure there.
Yeah, no, great questions. Before they're able to really book their event, we have to get their waivers and their insurance, liability forms, so they'll send those to myself, and then, if we need to file them or have them on file there, the city will. And I'll be monitoring those who are paying, for their practices. And
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about outstanding. I just was curious if it'd be easy for someone maybe to skip a little bit. I'll get to it later because I'm busy practicing, whatever. And I'm sure they'll pay. It's just, and I don't want to be really hard on it, but I just want to make sure we have someone that's monitoring.
you won't have to be hard on it, I will for you.
Oh, well, I don't, if you want me to, I'd be happy to come down. I'm pretty scary sometimes when I come down.
And we did involve a lot of the travel teams who will be using the field. We had a meeting with them, actually, a couple meetings, and discussed some of these fees and really got some of their feedback to make sure we were all on the same page.
And I thought Councilman Clark shake his head. I guess we don't need to include what we provide as the field prep.
No, it's pretty standard.
Okay. And then that's fine. I noticed it wasn't in here, and if we don't have
It's pretty much your standard.
Yeah. That was my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I move we approve then.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. And I'd like to mention as well, I know our staff, the department heads and things, and investment, Parks and Recs doing a lot of work to get these done, and Grant, you're kind of the man behind the scenes and doing a lot of the, all these together, and always don't get a lot of recognition, so thank you for all your work doing that. Rural community consult, God, I can't even say that, rural community consultants discussion.
You skipped the VP.
Well, that's
Oh.
fine. Ron, then we'll turn the time back over to you. Thanks for keeping me in line.
All right. I'm happy to go the rural one if you
We'll
want.
start checking these off.
What I've been doing.
Come on. So, Edwin diligently stuck with, contacting, the gentleman, I can't remember the moment, but, at BP. And what we found out is that what we actually will have to do to have a contractual agreement with BP is we have to give them an amount per month that how many units we would like to commit ourselves to. So it's not an average of all months, which, works out really good because it really varies throughout the year. So basically what we looked at is, based on the average spend over the last few years. And then we also looked at it by, the highest to see, okay, what makes the most sense. And so we looked at what the average costs were, based on the actuals, and the savings based on if we were to complete a 5-year average usage unit agreement with the city, and we would have saved in the same time frame $41,000. Mostly that's driven by the 1 month that was $50,000, which everybody knows what happened there. But if we were to use the highest in 5 years, it actually would end up being 38,000, which is still a good savings over what the actual was. So the note there, the fixed price would replace the index price for the monthly volumes that we set each month. Any volume consumed in excess of the fixed price volume on a monthly basis would be priced at the aggregate monthly index price, and any monthly volume not consumed would be credited back to us at the price difference between our fixed rate and the aggregate index price at the time of the deficient volume. So the prices shown are estimates only, and they will need to be refreshed before, and this is important. He gave us what it would be as of that day, and he said this changes on a daily basis. So, you know, when we first talked about this, we talked about, he had mentioned somewhere in the $5.50 per unit, I believe, and these prices are all 1 year is $4.15, 2 years $4.37. So the price per unit goes up the longer we extend the contract. However, if we don't extend the contract for 5 years, then we set ourselves up 12 months from now to be in the same situation where it's so vulnerable right now that, you know, who knows what could happen between now and then. So as we looked at all of this, Edwin and I agreed that probably what we would recommend is a 5-year fixed price based on 2 years average usage, which would commit the city to $41,000 a year, plus or minus any volume adjustments, and that would be from July or August, depending on how quickly we could do this, of this year through June or July of 28. And so the actual spend for fiscal year 21 was 36,000, and the actual spend for fiscal year 22 was 69,000. So 41 is kind of towards the lower end.
One quick question. So their rate do they have to give us notice when the rate changes?
No.
They just change the rate?
The contract we have with the state is, because we're on the state contract with BP,
Okay.
we get it at market or index price less 4%. That's just what it is.
Okay.
So if it jumps to $50, then we're gonna pay $50 less 4%. And if it's down to $2, we pay $2 less 4%.
I see. Good.
And they do not have to give us any notifications, so.
Wonderful. I want that contract.
Yeah, this is nice for us as a city, right? I mean, we're taking our chances, but the bottom line is you'll now know what for the most part, this is our cost, this is what we have, and usually we don't use more, right, Edwin?
No, usually when we said we were seeing by month how much, that was a nice thing too. Like I have a fixed amount over the whole time we've been open. I'm seeing the averages, and when I get my spikes, it's usually right around when I'm doing my pool drains and all that, so I can see and got a pretty good dialed in picture on what the maximum amounts are, so.
And if you look on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 column over it, there's the averages and the highest for the months. And you actually have a printed copy. It's hard to see because I can't see that. But
Yeah.
so the highest is not typically that far off from the average over the last few years. So again, instead of 36,000 in this contract, we would have spent 41,000. So it's in 2021, but instead of 69,000 in 22, we would have paid 41. So it would have been great savings. So.
Well, you take your chances anyway, but it's nice sometimes to have it locked in and know what your rate is, and that would help.
Yeah.
We have a very low bill this month.
Yeah, I actually didn't have to go up to.
Yeah.
That's what I really changed my mind, so.
Well, I appreciate the research that's been done, and I think it's a good idea. I really do. That's an interesting contract that we have, but it's good of you guys to look at that. It's too bad that we had that month that kind of spurred this, but at least we can get in a situation where we're not going to get caught.
We don't see this in our individual bills for our homes because we pay a fixed rate through Dominion. And if it's $50, we're going to pay them $10 per unit. And if it's $2, we're going to pay them $10 per unit. And then they just kind of make adjustments over time if necessary, so.
Totally different concept.
I kind of like this, and I do, again, appreciate the research and that was an option. I wish we'd have known, but you never know, and we had a great rate before, and market volatility is what it is. Sometimes you get burned, sometimes you're like, man, this is great, we're not hardly paying anything, but you just never know. But for budgeting and in the long run, I think saving citizens, I think it's a good way to go, and you both are recommending this as well, and so I would move we approve.
We have a motion to approve. Any questions or comments?
At 5 years.
5 years at whatever the rate.
The rates are probably going to be a little bit different than this, but, we would feel comfortable, I think, if you just say, as long as it's not 10% higher or lower or whatever.
I would be willing to amend the motion to that, so.
Is that clear enough for you on the minutes?
I move that we approve the contract within the, as long as the price doesn't go up 10%, above 10%.
Whatever you're comfortable with, I just threw a 10 out there.
10% fluctuation for 5 years. Is that flexible enough for you?
Yeah.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Baird, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to rural community consultants discussion. Mike Hanson, Drew.
So, I don't know how many years we've been contracted with you guys, 2 years now? Okay, so just over a year ago, I was given the direction to kind of spearhead this, I don't know what we want to call it, look over the code.
Yeah.
Reevaluate our code, update the code, all of it. And it's definitely not the funnest thing to do, putting code but it's a necessity, trying to get up to date with the changes and get in sync with what we need to do. So we've come to a point where our contractual, we are at the amount that we not to exceed. In fact, we're over that now, I believe.
Yeah, kind of.
So we invited Michael tonight just to give an update on where we're at, and what the excess that we encumbered on the expenditures and where we want to go from here, and let you guys kind of decide on a direction moving forward. So.
Yep. Thanks, sir. Mike Hanson, Rural Community Consultant. Yes, I am. It's good looking in real life. Does the council have the handout here with our logo on the top? So I think we sent it to you a couple hours ago, so these are a dozen copies. Just as a quick reminder, so this memo is got 3 parts. One is to remind you what the whole project is, what the goals were, that kind of thing. The second thing is to give you a quick overview of what work has been done to date. And then the third thing is we do need to get some direction from them on the last element of this project, which is to move the code that we've done for you online into our new posting platform. So the background of this project, main points basically is your municipal code is like every other town's municipal code, except a little bit worse and a little bit better. Mostly worse. Sorry, don't put that in this. But that was the project. It was our firm was going to come in and go top to bottom on your municipal code, every title, make our recommendations, and we were trying to look at 3 different things. One, is it aligned with state statute? 2, does it match kind of the best practice we would recommend, especially in the land use areas? And then 3, is it written in plain language? That is becoming more and more important in the legal side of things, when there's contention basically on what the city's requiring a developer. If a judge basically looks at it and says it's not written in plain language, the tie doesn't go to the municipality, it used to, it now goes to the developer, and that's state statute. So you need to kind of go through your codes and clarify and simplify and streamline things. So we've added a number of tables and charts and illustrations and, pre-written paragraphs into a couple sentences. Anyway, the project began in April 2021, and the contract did say 2 years, so we're a little bit over that. The budget was, had a two-part, the total was $25,000. The first, $5,000 was just our team locking ourselves into a room and reading the top and bottom and making red lines, and the remaining amount was supposed to be iterative meetings and such with the city, to just customize and discuss, do you guys want to do this or that? That kind of thing. The reason why the budget's over, I think it's $600 something over, it was just interest on, very big invoice that didn't get paid for a while. I thought our accountants took care of that and made that go away. So hopefully I'm employed tomorrow, but just pretend like we're not. We are committed to a long-term relationship with the city, and we think we need to hold up our side, which we said not to exceed, and that's what we wanted. So the other part, though, and I was talking about this more in a little bit, is we have a code hosting software we came and showed a while ago. Folks got excited about it. We wanted to move your code into it, but I think we were assuming that things would be approved incrementally, and so therefore we would just kind of incrementally get you online. And anyway, that work hasn't happened. We're still committed to giving that to you, and we're not going to bill you for that, because we told you we'd get that to you. I'll get to that in a minute. As far as the second part of the update of what work has been done, I just made a quick list of each title, and some of the edits, I was told this doesn't actually calculate correctly the numbers I was looking at. There's more edits than this, but your title, just the administration and personnel, this is, the powers and duties of the mayor versus the city manager, that kind of title. You can see we did 684 changes, recommended changes. Some of it is plain language where you say the same policy, but you just say it in a different way. Some of it is new content that you would really want to look at. And some of it is, the current city code points to an old state citation, so we fix that. And, so there is still some work on the city side to do here before you actually have your new code going. I will point out too, though, your zoning chapter, we do it in Google Docs, and Google is struggling to keep up with all the edits we have in this one. There's 1,700 changes that we've suggested and discussed with staff that you'll want to take a look at here, just your zoning chapter. The other thing we've done is we went through the 2022 section. We reviewed every bill that exceeding towns and our team thinks is relevant to the municipalities. We went through every one of them and made edits that we think will get you in compliance. They're a little ahead of the actual state, some of the due dates in the state statute. But that's done already, that's complete. And then early on in the project, our team was given direction to do some, call it deep dive studies on very narrow, big study on little issue or an individual issue. Those are incorporated, but we did use some hours on that. We probably, in I don't know, the city, if they had a time machine, they go back and do that again, but we did do that. That's all. As far as your hosting software, the feedback our team needs is, we're here handing you, I call it a giant 3 reminder. Here's a whole lot of homework your planning commission and your city council is going to need to do. Love it if you trust us and take us at our word that everything we've done is perfect. Really recommend, though, that you really get comfortable with it before you actually adopt it. We don't know your process and your intent. We know that, maybe even staff still wants to have some time to go through it. When it comes to taking your code and putting it into our hosting software, if you give us direction that you think, hey, we're going to go through slowly, like one title per meeting or something like that, it's 17 meetings, then our team would likely go and take your existing code and put it in the platform. If you think, though, that you're going to tackle 3 or 4 titles in a planning commission meeting, and some of them you probably could, to be honest, but I don't know. But if you're going to go with more of an accelerated, focused adoption process, then we would suggest have our team wait until you actually adopt and then give us the clean and final copy. Either way, we want to move your code into it. Love our platform. Not having it for this project has been kind of not awesome, because of the search capability and, staff reports, with the way we built that, so. Anyway, as mentioned, yeah, we are at our time and budget limit. We would love to continue partnering with the city. We're not here to try to shake you down for, but we would need them, if we could keep going.
One of the questions that I would have to begin is, and maybe there's a misunderstanding on our part, but I was under the impression that as your team made modifications to, let's start with Title I. Sure. As you make those modifications and kind of finalize some of those modifications, those would come before like our staff, our attorney, and then on to the city council, or first maybe, well, it wouldn't necessarily be a land use, so it wouldn't be planning and zoning on that one, but to the city council, and then we could be, like for the last 2 years, we could be working through these one title by one. What I think, where we're at a little bit is it's been 2 years, we see all these edits now, and now it's almost like we've got to go through the whole thing all at once and try to approve all of this, when we were thinking, if we were seeing that along the way, then I don't think there would be as many questions.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And in fact, there's two arguments there. There's one that says, code book that's going to be really good has to be internally consistent. So it is kind of iterative. If you change this over here, make sure you change it in that title and so forth. But yeah, no, we completely agree. We're not sure that we're really in control of what actually gets to, agendas and packets and stuff. But I do know early on our team, we went through a personnel change, so I apologize. I wasn't directly on that. But I'm trying to get up to speed. That's what we would probably do if we had a time machine, is get a work plan where it says these 3 titles first, knowing we're going to clean them up later. But let's get these things.
Quick question for you on so the edits that you made, do you have red line copies?
Yeah.
Give to all of us?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that'd be the first step, so that we could just see those red line copies, and then we could decide which ones we could just tackle as a city council versus having to go through planning and zoning. But most of these original, or the first, I would say 13 probably have to be tackled right here at this council and don't even need to go to planning and zoning. We want 15, 16, and 17 obviously to go to planning and zoning. So if you could get those to us, we as a council could look at that and say, we could tackle 1 through 5 in one meeting.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And you probably could. And we've done them in a Google format. And so we give you, comment rights is what it's called. So if this councilman has an idea, they can type it in and everybody can see what the red line is. And that actually really speeds up your review internally. So more than happy to get you that.
Has any of the staff seen the recommendation, the changes to red lines? You guys?
We have access to the online.
So for the past 12 months, probably 14 months, we've been monthly meeting with Michael and his crew, receiving our comments back and vice versa. So we just haven't updated it to the point to present to you guys as far as what staff's recommendations first.
Well, that's good to know. So at least there's been a communication and.
Yeah, that would have been important if I could mention that. We've been trying to meet regularly and discuss kind of the bigger issues. We also have been putting together summary reports, like a cliff notes, to kind of speed up those staff meetings where we don't expect them to go through 60 pages of red lines and find the needle that's really. We've highlighted we call them policy discussions that need to happen. They're the more important parts.
Based on one other question, then if anybody else has any questions, but the edits that you made so far on all of our ordinances are, what percentage percentage of completion, where do you think you're at as far as being?
We're very comfortable where your code is. We are actually making some recommendations that you want your council to look at on the land use and subdivision side. And the only reason why I say that is legislature passed some interesting bills. There's a lot of interesting bills this year. And, we've incorporated our interpretation of them, and we've actually implemented in other cities, but we want you to be comfortable with it because it's not actually statutorily required yet. For example, a subdivision for a residential neighborhood. We have your new process, the new state process there, but it's not been tried in the courts, and there's still a chance the legislature could come back and change that.
And so you're thinking we're pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
How much more time do you think you need if we continue a contract or something like that?
So we asked, we told you, the not to exceed amount. We want to give you the platform, for that. If you wanted to just take it and run with it, we'll just clean up our package. We don't bill you, we just don't exceed that amount. If, on the other hand, the city's working on other things and they want us around, like a retainer, we can do an hourly thing where if the staff wants to meet with us, then we can just bill those hours specifically, But it all depends on your review, I guess.
So I guess we're to the point of review now, where we just review everything and start to implement it and then get it updated.
And the city could just come back to us in 3 months and say, hey, we love it, we refined it, and this, we want to work with you for 20 hours, or something like that. It doesn't have to be a tonight thing. We'll still just get it all cleaned up and transmit it over to you.
Any other questions from the council?
No, I don't think we need to make a motion on this until we get a chance. Because I'd be curious to see what it looks like. I'd like, Grant and make sure the people in the leadership, administration, whatever, have seen it.
My personal thoughts is I am definitely disappointed that we didn't make it online immediately. I believe in the contract originally it said that we were gonna get it online, our existing code right away and be able to work on that platform. That's how I understood it, and that was when I made the motion, what I understood. Also, you said that it started in April. The contract looks like it's signed in August. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Okay. Sorry.
On that price or not, so we're not quite at 2 years.
Okay.
Anyway, I hope that you understand, I'm just a little bit frustrated with the situation, because we still have code online that's 2 years old, or that hasn't been updated in 2 years. We have new ordinances that have passed that I feel are really important for the public to be able to see. Sure. And also just my concerns to council, I'd like to be a part of the discussions as they're going. I know staff's working on it, but we ought to be steering those discussions, because it's kind of wasting money if the city council, plus we're elected to do this. This is our job. So I feel like we should have an involvement there. I'm not basically, I'm just saying, I'm putting this out there.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Again.
Anyway, I'm just putting it out there because I'm a little bit frustrated with the situation.
Yeah.
Well, given that we have to approve a lot of these changes, we need to be involved in it, so I would agree.
The positive is that from my position, I didn't think anything was happening. And so now to hear that something was happening that's a positive thing.
And I hope that, I'm passionate about this, but I'll try to be come across in a frustrated way. Anyway, I'd really like to be a part of the discussion from the beginning, or at least see the council involved, because that way we can steer what's getting the deep dives and such things like that.
I agree 100% with David Baird's comment on, it's important that we have staff input, there's no doubt. But to have no input from the council up to this point, not necessarily your fault, but that's just a problem in and of itself, because we're elected to be the legislators for the city. And that's a big concern, even in our federal government right now, is that we have hired staff for bureaucracies that are really making a lot of the decisions, and the elected officials that people elected to represent them are completely out of the loop. But that's not anything that we want here. So
anyway,
got a lot of work to do.
The proposal that you guys sent was, even though we had approved it in March, it looks like it came back up.
Oh, okay.
In July. Not sure the signatures on it. So anyway, yeah, I'd like, if we're moving forward, those are things I'd like to see, is that we're closely involved. And I would love to see it get implemented right away with our current code.
Okay.
I mean,
Can do.
just because I think our citizens ought to know what's the law. Yeah, anyway. And I'm not taking it out, I'm kind of taking it out.
That's
me too, sorry.
Any other questions, comments? Well, we do appreciate the update. This helps quite a bit, understand where we're at and where we need to go from here. Sounds like we're pretty close. If we can get those red lines to the council.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on, then we can start jumping into those and make sure we're feel comfortable and start approving this so we can get it online.
Love it. Let me tell you what as far as my workload, I think this is what we'll do. We'll go back and take your current code. I think we've already started this, but we'll get your current code, put it in the Civic Link. And once that's in place, we'll create 2 books. One book is your existing code, with all the titles. The second book will be a link to all the Google Docs for each individual title, so that you have one place to go to, choose your own adventure when you get in there. It's either this is what it is today, this is what it might be tomorrow. And then we'll give you guys, all the rights to go in there and make your own comments and see what everybody's been thinking, so. Yeah. Yeah, and then, that can be available to the public too. That'd be really good for your process too.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that sounds good.
Okay, we'll get on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Cody. Thanks for coming tonight, by the way.
It's a pleasure. I've never seen Utah so great. I've been traveling the last couple of weeks and it's just like a brand new world. It's
Pretty awesome.
All right, so some of you weren't even a part of this when we first started this process in 2019. Some of you weren't. The plan was to create an opportunity to invigorate downtown, the Main Street. And there's a formal process to go through to allow tax increment, the value of properties as it goes up, to fund improvements on Main Street or give opportunities for businesses to do that. And so we've shifted gears slightly in how we're going to do that because of the ARPA funds that the mayor mentioned. That gives us an opportunity to fuel grants and revolving loan funds to make this happen. So what
This is as much as what we thought we have, by the way. Thanks around it.
we were talking about 400, that's what we were talking about.
Right.
That's 8.
Mhm.
It's better, yes. As long as it doesn't go to the gun.
That's already well.
Just kidding.
Okay, girl, a little bit more.
So let me just describe to you a little bit about what has happened so far. So in 2019 and 2020, we teamed with a group, IBI out of Salt Lake, and they created design guidelines for Main Street, which is online, it's on your website. So these are concepts. So if someone wants to change the face of their building on Main Street, there's some design guidelines to say, hey, let's use some uniformity here so that it doesn't look like it's haphazard. So that one person's idea and another person's idea may be great in their world, but let's unify and come together. And now this next phase is, well, how do we go about providing a way for a private entity to say, well, it's great that you have these design guidelines, but I still have to pull money in my pocket and I have to do them. And how can I go about doing that? So there's this formal process called to create a tax increment district or a project area where tax increment funds can come in and supplement the ARPA funds that are available. In 2019, you adopted this board, actually not this board, the RDA board adopted a resolution that designated the boundaries for that project area. So basically all of Main Street, a little bit going to the east, and a little bit going to the west. So go to the next, there you go to the summary. So the whole of this whole project is to invigorate Main Street and use 800,000, not 400, of ARPA funds to create a grant program and a revolving loan fund. And the tax increment, the CRA project area that we were going to create will replenish that grant fund. That's 400,000 of grant money. And what we're assuming is we'll have a 75% of that new value that's created along that corridor would flow back for 15 years to this board, well, to the CRA, or the RDA board, to replenish that grant fund. And if you're a business on Main Street, I think the idea is, this is what I'm proposing to the city is, if I'm a business owner, I can come to you and say, can I get a grant for my down payment? And then they can go to a bank and say, I've already got X amount of dollars. I have the design guidelines already. I go to a bank and then get a balance in loan. If someone can't do that, then they could come forward and say, can I get a revolving loan from you because I'm not in a position to be able to get a loan for whatever reason. Or you could choose as an RDA board to say both. You can do both of those things.
Yeah, because if we could get, what are we making right now in our PTIF accounts, or the
5%?
Yeah, so if we can make close to that much on a revolving loan fund, it's still a little bit better than market, but money in our pocket. Sure. Well, it'll replenish that and actually give us, grow that fund.
Yeah, and my recommendation is to have it either at the cost of inflation or the PTIF, either of those. But what's nice about paying it to the cost of inflation, right now it's not awesome for the business owner. This is going to be a really high loan, but it will keep the real spending value the same.
True.
Right. You'll never lose value in your fund.
Yeah, 5% would not cover the cost of inflation, right?
Not right now. But it also might be a disincentive. They may say, thanks for your revolving loan fund. It's really not very valuable to me.
Well, and in all honesty, our goal isn't to make money on it. It is to provide some type of a program that's fairly economical for these businesses to do. So the grant plus the loan, even if we're losing a little bit on the money itself, we're gaining in taxes and property taxes and helping them draw more people to their business.
Yes,
so.
Definitely. Okay, so part of the document that I've created describes this process of how they can get a grant. We haven't formalized the application or anything like that. That's something that still need to do, but it describes that process of how they could go and get a grant or get the revolving loan fund. And the document also discusses the way in which you have to go, the formal process that's in statute to go to the other taxing entities and request their participation in the project. So that's the bottom. We need buy-in from the taxing entities, the county and the school district, and you as the city have to provide your tax income. Right, let's go to the next page here. So here's the approval process. Like I mentioned before, in 2019, you adopted a survey resolution that established the boundaries. So you can see the yellow, that map with the boundaries of the project area. The idea is really to spend the funds though on the north and south, right downtown Main Street, even though some of the funds would come from outside. So my firm drafted the project area plan and budget. That's step number 2. That's been provided to the city. I don't know if it's been given to you guys yet. Have you seen it? I mean, the stuff I wrote is really good, so you'd have noticed.
I haven't seen it. Well, I may have seen it, but not seen it.
You might have a huge list of things in your file. So that will be given to you. That document basically describes the formal process you have to go through in statute to request tax increment. But it's beyond that, it's broader. It's the first time I've ever not just stuck to the statute, it's broader and says, hey, what are we really trying to do here? Let's not just stick to the statute. We're trying to reinvigorate downtown. How do we go about doing that? It discusses things such as maybe we'll put an archway, maybe we'll slow down traffic. We're going to do some other things on Main Street. Let's talk about parking. All of that together, so that when you go to the school district and the county, you're saying, first of all, we're bringing $800,000 to the project. We're not simply here with our hands out. We're going to spend our own money to help people, and we're just asking you for money that will help replenish this grant over a period of time. So that project area plan and budget is the next step. The survey resolution was done several years ago. So eventually you'll need to have a public hearing on that document. So We'll make sure that it gets over to you for you to review. And we really, the next step is we need to have a discussion with the county and the school district, which I think you've had some of those, but we need to have a formal discussion with them and help them understand what's really going on.
In the discussion, the communication that I've had with the county, I think they're pretty favorable. In fact, I don't think that'll be much of an issue. The school district, maybe a little bit tougher conversation.
Do we have to get from both, or?
We do. It's got to be every taxing entity in that.
Yeah, clarification is you don't have to have everyone. It just means you don't have as much money.
That's true.
You could just be the city's property tax, or it could be the city and the school district, the city, school district, and the county, the city and the county. So yes, you could do both. This is just an example of, this gets a little wonky, but you currently have value on Main Street. It's locked in. So if someone wants to participate, that blue down the bottom is the base year. You get your taxes on that, no matter what. And then as new growth occurs over the next, whenever something happens and there's new growth, then 75% of that would come to the board to replenish the grant fund. And then 25% would flow to the taxing entities as new growth and new value. And then at the end of the project, I showed 20 years, it should be at 15. That's my bad, but at 15, then all of that is now new growth. So that would be an influx of revenue at the end of the project area. What would incentivize the school district and the county to be involved? County, I think, sounds like they're involved because they recognize we want to help the city. It's good. School district, if you ran for the school district, you had no idea that you have the ability to influence economic development. And you probably don't care other than just like a regular citizen would care. But when you're saying, can we have some money? The first thing they're going to say is no. But there are ways in which tax increment can be structured so that it benefits them. For example, all their property taxes right now are allocated in buckets. They can't just spend it however they want. But if it flows through this CRA, we can deliver to them funds that are unencumbered and they can use however they want.
And that's the 25%, right?
That is we can structure so the 25% is, yes, unencumbered. Yep. Or if they say, no way, we're going to give you 75, then we say, well, we can make 50% of it unencumbered. And then you can use that however you want. So there's a lot of tools we can use in those negotiations. And that really is our next step, is to talk to them. Let's go to the next slide and see what we have here. Okay, so here's a sample. Here's a sample of what could be produced along Main Street. And we've simply assumed, as you may know, in Utah, you have this thing called the certified rate, which as property just appreciates, your tax rate just goes down. But if it's in a CRA, you have any appreciation that occurs, you actually receive increment from that, and then your certified rate. It adjusts the certified rate calculation after. So in other words, if you create a CRA, you're going to get the tax increment just from properties going up, which is very likely on Main Street that you'll just see appreciation occurring over time. So this creates, over 15 years, we think, potentially 5 million of new tax revenues to all of those taxing entities. The county, school district, you as the city, and then the small little guys, the conservancy districts and the mosquito bay. What we suggest is that then the uses of those increment would be some flows to the taxing entities under the uses of funds. And at the very bottom would reimburse the grant fund. 3.8 would be what would actually come to the board to replenish the grant fund. So that's a lot of money and maybe more than you would need. So you have room in your negotiations with these entities to say, maybe we don't need 3.8.
3.6 will work.
Yeah, 3.6 will work. Yeah. So I just wanted you to see the dollar amounts so you had some idea of what it is that could be generated on Main Street.
And that's a 3.8 over 15 years, right?
3.8 over 15 years. Yep.
What is that? Yearly?
Oh, like 2. Yeah. 250,000, yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Present value terms, it's like right at. So really from here, it's, I wanted to present this information to you so you know what's happening. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Sure. Yeah, we've kind of already talked about these things. I guess the thing I would talk about here is I would suggest a formal agreement with every person who wants to get a grant or a loan. It could be simple, it could be a one page, but you will need a document. So if they, especially if they get a loan, if they don't pay, there's a way for you to do something about that. And then who would make the recommendations? We have this economic development committee. It would make a lot of sense to have that group review any applications that come in and say, yeah, this looks like a good project. Let's recommend that to the RDA board for final approval of the project.
That'd be perfect use of that committee.
Yeah, I think so. There's some really smart people on the committee. All right, from a going forward, what needs to happen now? Review the project area plan and budget. It's a huge, long document, but most of it's code. You don't have to actually read it. It's just the first 3 chapters. Review that, then we need to set up meetings with the county and the school district and make sure that they're on board or get their feel of what's going on. And then once we're in that spot, we need to have a public hearing that will have to be noticed 30 days in advance. We actually have to send notices to every property owner who's in that district. So there's a lot of parcels in there. And we're in the process of gathering all those parcels to make sure they're accurate. We have old data, so that's the whole process.
When do you think you could be ready with all the parcels in that?
I think we're just waiting for Jones and DeMille. Actually, did they reach out to you, Josh? Okay, they were going to reach out and because they were going to pull all those parcels. They sent me parcels, but it was from 2019, which is valuable, but not.
So let's get a punch list real quick, Cody, if you don't mind, and I'll write it down so we can follow up. So
parcels.
First things first is parcels within the area.
Yep.
And that's Jones and DeMille.
They were subcontracted with me, but they said they already contracted with you guys, so they just said, why don't we just reach out directly.
And then the next step, well, in the meantime, be talking to the school district.
Yeah, so if you want to set up meetings with the school district and the county, I'd be happy to come out
And the county.
and sit down with them.
So if we could get those lined up close to the same.
That would be really
on the
helpful for
same
me.
day.
Oh, okay.
That would be nice. Is there anybody else that we need to include on that? Obviously, I would say those, but we do have like the mosquito abatement and some really small ones that I don't really know if we.
It's such a small amount of money. I think the mosquito abatement was like $50,000 over 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't think it's worth your.
Central Utah.
They usually just adopt it if you ask them to do it.
Yeah, I've been in on some of those meetings and I haven't seen any yet, but they haven't.
They just do it by.
I think that's a low hanging fruit to go for. It's not a lot, but it's.
Yeah, it's something but you don't really need to ask them. We'll just put it together and send them the agreement and they'll just approve it.
Okay. And then, as soon as we get the parcels identified, we can be working on the school district county, in the meantime, and then we need 30 days notice. I saw that August, what?
First.
Date?
August 1st would be if we had all the parcels right now and we felt comfortable.
So.
But we can push that out to.
Let's do our second meeting in August to have a public hearing. That would give us until the second meeting in July. That gives us almost 4 weeks to get everything together, announce it, and then have this approved. And we should have consent or not from those taxing entities. And once we have the public hearing, let's say the second meeting in August, then what's the next step to finalizing the RDA?
Yeah, so once we do have that public hearing, at that same meeting, you will adopt the project area plan and budget. That document is put together. The RDA board will adopt that. And then the city council will adopt it by ordinance. So that'll happen on that public hearing. And I can get you drafts to all those documents.
Yeah, we can get drafts that we can have Grant look over, and then we can, so that as they go into ordinance, yep, and I'm thinking, well, I'll think of it here in just a second, but.
And then after that, at that same meeting, then you'll adopt an interlocal agreement.
That's what I was gonna ask, interlocal agreements with each
of those
entity.
entities. And they'll have to adopt them as well, but you can adopt them all at the same meeting.
But we would probably want those drafted We would probably want something drafted when we're talking to them so they can get an idea of how it works.
Yeah, I can give you drafts of all those, and then you can just give me.
So,
So that's part of the contract that I have is, it includes an attorney that drafts all those. So they're a draft form and then we'll give them to you guys for review.
perfect.
So you can keep them or throw them out.
Okay, so I have parcels, identifying the parcels with Jake and Johnson Mill, working on the school district and the county. Also, in the meantime, working at the interlocal agreements with them. Looking to get all that done by our second meeting in July. And then hopefully having everything ready. Also a draft ordinance
All that will.
for the RDA and everything by then, because we want that when we go and announce for the public hearing.
Yes.
What would be handy and helpful is if we have a packet of all of that information, as much information as we could gather that's pertinent to those property owners, to help explain what's going on. Then that packet could go out by the second week in July, or the second meeting in July, and then they would have that full month. And hopefully any questions that they might have would be answered in that packet. And which would, in my mind, help them want to push this forward because it's really going to benefit them in that area.
It accesses, it opens up money for them.
Exactly. So,
Yes, we can do all that.
any questions on that? I'm excited about it. I know this seems like, but I'm really excited about it. And it's finally something that's,
Yes. So I know we talked about this 2019, you said we came with a boundary there.
Yes.
What happened there? Did that just fizzle out? We didn't.
we lost our city manager.
Yeah, he was good.
And then we had a lot of other things that we were dealing with in the meantime. And so
Because I was excited about it then too.
yeah, this is something that Josh and I got together. I mentioned to Josh, hey, we were working on this before, we need to resurrect this idea. We're finally through all the other messes that we had to clean up, and that's why it's kind of coming back around. Yeah, and full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So personally, I'd like to see this as something that we are ready to go by next spring.
Absolutely.
Giving out money this fall would be awesome after the August and everything else. It would be awesome to
There's
get.
no reason you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
By the end of the year.
But this will, I mean, we have projects this year. We've got to figure out what to do next year. So this is one of those. So we need a few more. Just kidding.
I'll bring my gun range next time.
Awesome. Any questions for Cody on that?
No.
It's already been approved and things. We just want to make sure that we understand the timeline, what's going on, what are. Absolutely.
So I'll be working on my end to get all those documents put together. So,
Okay, if you can get that to us, we'll, on our end, we'll start working. We got plans for this now. We can work with it. Great.
okay.
Thanks, Cody. Great to see you. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
Ryan. We'll make electric easement. Do you want me to do the flagpole project approval first? Because that's probably, can't have the easement without.
I think I've done everything backwards on this one, but, so our last meeting, you've already approved an easement and right away, right? You remember?
Yeah, we
Meeting before. So, however, we needed to do it again. Our neighbor didn't quite like where we put it, so, and I agree with them, it's kind of going to their property, so we shifted it to the east. I don't know if you can scroll down on that. The map's not the greatest, but.
What neighbor was that again? I'm just kidding.
No, like I said, I agree with it. So we shifted it to the east, so it's kind of shooting, the power line's just gonna shoot up to them rocks. And get to the top.
Is it gonna be above ground?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it says above.
I was talking about that a little bit. Yeah, we were talking about maybe doing a buried one from the west over up on top. That'd be so nice to bury. Yeah. Did Kimberly approve that hole up on that butte?
No, I did not go to Kimberly.
Sorry.
They are putting it a little bit to the north, west of the flagpole to kind of hopefully it's not out in clear view. And it'll still be there, you'll still see it, but it's kind of down a ways. So you'll probably, when it, you know, probably see half the pole over the sky. Over the ridge. So it's still gonna be out there, we can't get rid of it. Anyway, it's been reviewed through Grant's looked at it, there's no issues.
And we have the legal description, obviously, and everything says it'll be recorded and.
When we approve the easement.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Next.
While we're on this, we'll continue, I'll give you an update with the flagpole project itself. This is just what we have in it for costs. We thought that you guys should know what the status was and where we are, and obviously right now we've already paid 50% of the pole itself, just so they can get started and get going, which is quite a while ago. But with setting the pole, the flag itself, the concrete, the electrical, the lighting, everything, we're looking at around 83,000, a little over 83,000.
Part of the reason this is coming up is Ryan was wondering, you know, we needed the money for Moonlight, and he says, do we bring that before council or whatnot? And I recognized that, yes, this was put on in the budget, but it was never brought as its own project to be approved by the council. Does that make sense? And so with any projects, what I think would be, and what is actually a resolution that we create, those projects are brought individually when they start to council, so that we can approve the overall project cost. And then any expenditures within that project cost can be made without having to be brought to council. It's one of those things that we talked about and clarified with Grant that we had already done before. So as those projects are brought before, like this 83,000, we approve it, then they can pay the 8,000 for the electrical, they can pay, you know, all these other things, even though they've already done some of that, that's fine, we'll ratify what they've done, approve the project, but just for staff's, knowledge, when we do a project or start a project, we want to have that project brought to council, broken out just like this, approved like this, and then whatever expenditures you have that in that overall budget, you can just work on them. As things progress, come back to council with updates. That's at least currently all we expect. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Any questions from the council on this?
So can I ask a question? I know it's probably not that time, but so far as capital projects, which ones do you want to see versus the ones you don't need to see? Like purchasing a skid steer, for example. Probably it's gonna be one fixed cost, right? So I'm just wanting clarification. I mean, I'm on the same page with Josh. Just so we know which ones to bring. Is that fair to ask?
Yeah, that would be really good clarification on those capital projects. Because there's a lot on there that, once they're approved, departments go out and they start purchasing stuff that they need right away. So I get to that, if it's something like we know that we're working on, yeah, clarification would be great there, just so we know what we should move ahead with, what we should.
Give me a, so you're talking this that we approved tonight for our 2024 capital projects list, right? So you're saying which ones of these are and which ones don't?
What?
There's a lot on here.
So in the past, history's been anything on this sheet, when you go to purchase it or whatever, or go to complete that project, comes before the council. Does that make sense?
We have had some where we brought in, council said, we already approved this.
No, wait just a second. No, there's a distinction. What we said as a council is when we approved one of these projects, and where it came up actually was on the airport hangar. The airport hangar came just like this. With all the things, we approved the bid at 180,000, everything else. Then, when it came to pay, staff was saying, no, we can't pay that because we gotta approve that invoice before we pay the invoice. We said, no, we've already approved the capital project in the meeting, pay the invoice. So if council comes and there's more than one invoice to be paid on the project, we've already approved the project, you don't have to come back and get approved for every single invoice. However, each project should come before the council for approval before any expenses are made. Is
So
that it?
we'll just treat, the capital project list then is kind of a preparatory list. We shouldn't purchase anything off there until we bring it back.
Yeah, especially.
Over 10,000. I mean,
Yeah, especially the larger projects, obviously. So like the gun range, we approved 300,000. Hopefully that'll be changed. But that doesn't, when the gun range starts, the gun range will come back and we'll see all the expenditures on the gun range, including the 300,000 that we have to spend. And then once that project is approved as a whole, then you can spend up to that amount of funds on that. And you don't have to come back each time and ask for, if it's $50,000 invoice, but it fits within the project cost, then, go ahead and spend it. One thing that I've seen at Central Utah that worked really well is they do the same thing. So they'll bring a project, even though they have a budget that they pre-approve and everything else, they'll bring a project to us and say, this is what because these are all hypotheticals anyway. These aren't our numbers, these are just budget numbers. So when we have actual costs of what it's gonna cost, that comes to the council. Same thing on that board, and that's one that I think does things really right, and that's why I referenced it. Is they'll come to us with a project and say, this was budgeted, here's the actual costs, this is what we want to spend, and then we approve that then. They spend as much as they need. If any change orders are made or anything changes on that project, at that point, then they come back and say, hey, we budgeted this is what the contract said. However, we found this, and we need a change order, and it's going to increase by 10%. And that amount is then reapproved, that 10% approved through the same process. But if nothing changes, all they do is give us updates and say, we spent 50% of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can definitely do it that way. Historically, the city's already done it, as long as we can tell. Like a skid steer on there, like right after council, do it in order. And it was approved with the capital project. Well, we can bring it. It's no problem. That's just what
historically how long ago, because I remember when I first got on the council, we may have gotten away from that a little bit because of how many changes we've had. But I do remember those things coming back. I mean, if we budgeted 50,000 for a skid steer and the skid steer ends up costing us 43, and that comes back and says, hey, we budgeted this is 43. Just
how we did it was, and this is where my question was, because I understand the project side of it. I think that's an awesome way to do it, like we were here. But say ball picker, range ball picker. How we did it in the past was we'd actually get a bid, get it as a PO, but put it in the PO packet for approval, but it wasn't actually an agenda item.
yeah, and that works too. I mean, when it's
That's how it goes through.
normally the council will catch that and say, oh, you have this on here, what is that?
And Rhonda does a good job. If it's been approved by the council, she usually indicates that it was approved, at least, I've read those before usually, but we usually ask if I'm unsure on something, but I know that, and I agree. I think going forward, I would say if it's a single item that's budgeted, if you just put it in the purchase orders and stuff, I think that's okay. But if it's going to involve more things, I like this format that we have and would agree with that. Even though we've approved the budget, it'd still be nice to see the breakdown and then if there's any changes. And then of course, if you order skid steer at, whatever, 60,000, 100,000, and then it costs more than that, then obviously you'd have to bring that back anyway. So, because that's a change. Is that?
And what I would like to see too on the purchase orders, just so that it's clear, because what we're trying to do is be transparent without being too cumbersome. I feel like when we approved a project and then we were having having to approve every invoice after we approve the projects, that's what we didn't want to see. But even if it was on a purchase order and it was just a single line item for a piece of equipment, we reference the project number and everything else and say, this is here it is, this is what number it was on our capital projects, this is the amount. And what we want to see though, as a council and as a city, is just the transparency there, but, do any of those things ever go out over the budget? So I'm looking at the skid steer, originally it was 62.5, now it's 63.52. Would the council see that if it went to 65? Would we see that one besides just a purchase order, because that's above?
You'd have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's over, can't go to the purchase order, council has approved that. It's
Right.
done.
So I'd say if it's just a piece of equipment or a single line item, that as long as it falls within the budget, put it on the purchase orders with the reference number so that we, as transparent as you can. But any project that's,
Multiple items.
well, capital project, there's equipment and there's capital projects. And so I'm just thinking projects where you have bids and everything else, those things need to be brought to the council and then, finalized. And then once they're approved, you guys can write as many checks as you want to pay for material within that project without having to come back. So I think it makes your lives easier, but then it's transparent for citizens to see what's going on, and then we know what's going on in each project as well.
I think it's great. I apologize that I brought that up, but I felt like there needed to be some clarification there. So.
I vaguely remember, and I apologize, didn't we originally budget like 75 for this and it's 83? So that's part of the reason it's coming to us. Seems like, I thought I remembered 75. I could be wrong, it just, that number.
It was in 27, line item 27, but it was in a group of multiple projects under government buildings, so it's 250.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another perfect example of why we want to see something like this, so that that's a pretty vague description.
And I have the notes in the original budget that have the detail of what made that up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
any other questions on this?
No, I would move we approve the flag project
At the 83.
at the 83,435.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
We gonna make the July 4th?
Any opposed?
We shoot, yeah.
Okay.
We'll get a crane truck up there and raise the flag.
It's very confident.
Don't be surprised if you see something in the air Friday, so
Okay.
I know that seems quick and this, yeah. So Friday's what we're shooting for. But we won't fly the flag until 4.
Right.
In fact, Mayor, do we have the times on that?
8 o'clock in the morning is when the flag retirement's going to be, and 9:15 is when they're actually going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So Gary Rohr is going to be there with the Legion, and he's wondering, I told him that we would have staff at the flag, so he just needs to know whoever's going to be at the flag so that they can coordinate when they're wrapping up, and then, they can do flag raising, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we can, our signups for the race should be anytime from 8 o'clock till 9:15, something like that. And as soon as the Pledge of Allegiance goes to the flag raising, the race can kick off. They're thinking they may be able to do the 21 gun salute as a start to the race. So they're working on that still, but that's who will be. And so I can get you, if you don't have his number, I can get you his number.
Yeah, I think I'll need it.
Okay, and then that way you can coordinate whoever's going to be raising the flag with him and all that. It should be cool.
It's a big one. It's gonna take a few of us holding it. Like no lie, so 30 by 60 feet.
That's awesome.
If you need help, let me know.
Yeah, you can take the center. Okay, I think I'm next again.
Yeah.
Getting long-winded here. So this, we're always seeking for funding, right? We're trying to take advantage of all the free monies we can out there. And this is with the Division of Drinking Water. This project we submitted. This is just to seek for funding. We're not locked to it or anything. We're just trying to get a package deal. This was a project for North Crescent area for a water line to go from Highway 121 over and head east into the North Crescent area and kind of fix the fire flow and the pressures and the volume we have. So we estimated the project to be about 2.3 million. So we submitted our application. What I like about Division of Drinking Water, before you even go to the meeting, they say, hey, this is what we're gonna give you. What do you think? So we don't even have to go to the meeting yet. It's next week, so the timing's perfect here. I just need your guys' either a blessing or not a blessing to proceed it. Is it a good package? No, I don't think it's the best we've received. It's gonna be a 30% grant. So that leaves us with 1.6 million with 2% interest for 30 years on this water line.
And I know it takes the flows up there, but that's north of Roosevelt city limits, right? So
Yes.
that's outside of Roosevelt city limits. So we're investing.
Is it in our annexation?
Yes, it is in the boundary.
Do you think we'd get a better package later on? Is this the best we're able?
We have a much better package on the Page Bench.
Yeah, that was
The
good.
base bench was almost all grants.
So if we offer so say we do this and we start running water out there, like, how does that work? Can we require that they annex in before they hook up, or how?
That's a perfect question, because we can't require it, but we can go to them and say, if you'll annex this area in, we're willing to spend. I think there's some ability to do something like that and just say, hey, we're looking at the infrastructure in the area. It's going to improve all the water flows and everything else in your area, allow for expansions. But to do that, we would require annexation and see what kind of response we get.
I'm a little concerned just about the loan repayment because of the other ones we're gonna be taking on here pretty soon. So I'm a little nervous because that, I mean, you know, it adds to that how much, and we're already, the ball fields look like that may be more than we're not sure. So I'm a little nervous. I agree. It's good to go after stuff when we can. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant.
Do we know what we have had some complaints up there with some of the residents because of some of the issues that we had with our neighbors, but, and trying to.
Yeah, we've turned some valves on and off to a point where everybody's in pressure and has volume now. So there's a little bit coming from the north and a lot more coming from the south. Don't think I'm up here trying to twist arms or anything. This is just the numbers. I talked with Rhonda and we had the same concerns too, because we've got a 2 million gallon project that we've committed to in the ball fields. So there's always funding opportunities.
I like Dave's thought, and that's the same thought I was thinking is, if we could get a commitment from them in that area to annex in, because that's what we want to do anyway, and it is within our annexation boundary. The added property tax and things like that in that area may offset and help us pay that loan payment. But if we couldn't, there's no reason for us to put 1.6 million on the backs of our residents to pay for infrastructure that benefits people outside of our area.
I would agree.
If it was a 50-50, I don't know, Josh, you'd be that way too, but I think it'd be better. But
If I may be here, I'll be a little more bold than Ryan is. I don't think this is the best funding package for us at the current time. I think there's a lot better packages out there that we should and can pursue. So without saying I recommend we don't take it, I would say I do recommend that we pursue other funding opportunities that are much better.
That's enough said.
Yeah,
But it does open the conversation to visit with those people in that area and say, look, we've always had this problem, we're looking at this, what is the climate for annexation up there?
Sorry, Josh, for not involved.
Mayor,
Council, do not.
Mayor, I have about 15 minutes before I need to leave, maybe
Well, we have
20.
a couple items left.
Right, because I want to make sure it's here for what I had to vote
So
for.
let's, I guess, just to give Ryan direction, do we need to just a motion to table that or a motion to decline? I don't know. What do you need from us, Ryan, on that?
Do you need anything? Do they need to make a motion?
Don't do it.
Or just don't?
If you're not accepting it, I don't think you need to make a motion at all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, resolution amending section 280 of the Roosevelt City Procurement Policy. Okay.
And this, we came and talked to you about it before. I'm about 98% sure you guys did a motion. We were missing one thing, that being sunshine, and so we don't have a recording or the minutes from that meeting, so I'm just asking you to do it again. We were just changing two sentences. The end result was that it made it clear that as long as we're on the public surplus website, and it's open to everybody, that employees are allowed to place a bid.
I move we approve again.
Second by Councilman Flowers. All in favor, aye.
I remember this one, that's why I was just like, let's get it done.
Council discretionary spend for Interfaith Advisory Committee.
So this is mine, Mayor. So in the Interfaith Council, they decided to go ahead and go with the July 1st cleanup. They were talking about changing the date, and I said, let's just do it and learn what we can learn. Unfortunately, they were a little concerned about funds for they were going to provide cinnamon rolls and just bottled water for those that came to help with the cleanup on July 1st, come at 7 a.m. And so they would need some money for the cinnamon rolls. And I said we had some discretionary fund from the council we haven't used that I'm aware of, that I remember. And it would probably be about, I'm guessing roughly about $300 for cinnamon rolls and water, again, ballpark. And then they also created a logo, and they were hoping to get some shirts for those on the council. They're about $18 a piece, which would run about $250 for the members of the Interfaith Council. And so I said I would bring it up to the city council and make a recommendation that we budget whatever the council and we decide that we feel comfortable with to help them with that. And again, I think as the council, I would highly recommend we budget for the cinnamon rolls and water as a way of thanking those that come to help.
There was also a $160 flyer invoice.
Oh yes, thank you. There's 100. It was for the.
We had $600 for more advertising.
Yeah, it was for advertising. Yeah. So I would recommend that we at least do the money for the cinnamon rolls and for the advertising, which would be about 500. I'm guessing roughly about $500, give or take. And then the shirts, I would recommend it, but that, I mean, I'm sure the council would consider buying them as well, but that would be another probably 300, 250. So we're looking about $750 to $800 out of our discretionary. So that's where that came from, and I asked it be put on the agenda for tonight.
How much do we have total in our discretionary fund for the council?
You don't go over about 10 grand, you're good.
Now, where it's July 1st, some of those invoices I'm sure will come in before then, so will that go on the 2023 budget?
Yes.
Cool, and then we get a new budget for 2024? Yeah.
We better spend it.
Can we add $600 to that for advertising? And that would be the business discretionary fund as well, or it's not for interfaith thing.
You
Same type
actually
of
have it, you actually have a budget, line item in your budget for advertising and public notices. It's $700 right now, and that's where I've got the tentative budget is also $700.
That eats up a lot of that. So I did, so let's go to Don's first. So that's $700. What does council want to do with that?
Well, I got a question on the, like, I think we should pay for, my thought is that we should pay for cinnamon rolls and the advertising. I'm just curious how well attended it's expected. Is it expected to be fairly well attended?
We don't know. They're working with, well, this is their first effort in a while, so I don't know. We're planning on 200 cinnamon rolls and water. We're hoping the word gets out to the different various church organizations and others, but there's no guarantee. We could have 5 people show up or we could have 200. We don't know. They're hoping to learn from this, and next year what they'd like to do is do it earlier in April, like during K&K, cleanup, but they just didn't. They weren't organized yet, and they're just getting organized. They did hold their summer concert this last Sunday. I attended. Probably about 75 people there. I think the next couple will probably be better because this one I don't know was as well advertised as the next two. I think will be better. So.
Are they planning to announce it to their congregations?
Yes, yes, and they're going through all the different groups. So they're going to, leadership, whatever leadership pastors, state presidents, bishops, whoever, and they're trying to disseminate that as quickly as they can. They were concerned about July 1st. They said it doesn't matter what weekend you do it; it's always bad. But if we get 5 people, great, we'll put them to work. If we get 100 people, great. But you just don't know. If we run out of cinnamon rolls, we'll apologize, but I'm not too concerned about that. I just made a ballpark pick based on what they suggested, and they just thought they'd meet at 7. They're going to go to the various parks, Central Park, Old Mill Park, of course Constitution, and then they're also going to look at Main Street. So anyway.
I kind of think if they're announcing it to their congregations, there's a good possibility it'll be well attended. And I think with the attendance, that's a benefit to the city, a pretty good benefit. It's worth the money to buy the t-shirts.
Well, the t-shirts we're only getting for those on the Interfaith Council, not for.
But I think it's worth it, especially if they're promoting it and on being.
Well, I would recommend maybe a maximum, maybe like 800, and then if it's more than that, then they'll pay for the difference for the shirts or something. I think that, but I'll let you guys decide. I don't feel comfortable making that motion. I just gave you the information.
Any questions? Anybody willing to make a motion?
I'll make that motion for 800 out of the council fund for the interfaith committee cleanup.
Okay. I'll second. I have a motion and a second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
K&K discussion, do we really want to get into that this late?
I do.
Who does?
I
You
do.
have to leave, Don.
I got about 10 minutes.
Okay, let's go ahead and start on that.
For me, it's a short discussion.
Councilman Bauer, go ahead. You must have put this on the agenda.
No, I didn't, but I mean, I've been asking about it over and over, and
It maybe helps, I don't know if all the councils were why it's on, because we had a closed session, but we did go back into closed session and make a motion. And so we can either just pick up right there and make a motion in the open session, and then we can still do the notice like we had talked about. Or if you want to talk about anything additional in open session, well, then that's fine too.
just to kind of remind everybody where we're at with the
Yeah,
contract.
so just, I wasn't there, so.
Okay, we had talked.
You weren't there either, no.
I wasn't there either. Yeah, and I were gone.
Okay, so in the closed session, we had talked about the fact that we went through negotiations with K&K, came up with some new terms. We signed the contract, or at least we're ready to sign it. We sent a draft to them, asked them to follow up with us. They haven't. I've reached out to them multiple times. Rhonda's been over there and talked to their staff. We're not getting any indication that they intend to sign. It's kind of the conclusion I've reached. Is that the way you feel?
They've actually contacted me again and I have a tentative time to set for this Thursday to go back out there.
When did we send them the contract or signed?
The day after you guys approved it is when I sent. And so that was it in March? I'm trying to remember back.
I think it was March.
I think you're right. I
There
think it
is
was March.
something that I would like to go into closed session for on that particular contract.
Okay.
And so we might want to do that before we make a motion. Official motion, and it won't take long.
Okay, that's fine.
But if we could do that really quickly, because it would be strategy or negotiation.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm pretty sure I know what you want to say, and I do think that fits any of the reasons for
Okay.
I move we go into closed session then for discussion of the K&K contract.
Second.
All in favor, let's see, Councilman Buzimark.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So on the K&K discussion,
I move we table it and discuss it next month. We want to do it next meeting or next month?
We're only having one meeting next month.
well,
Yeah.
first meeting is July 4th.
So, yeah, this night is on July.
So,
It's Monday.
I think we just table it until,
Yeah,
You don't have to set it for next month, but you can.
okay, I'll just table the motion, I'll table the discussion.
motion to table that. You got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We do have some reports and things like that, but in all honesty, do you have anything
I
major
just-
you want to report?
Mayor, I need to approve the purchase orders.
Okay, let's do that.
I move that we approve them. I'll second
Got a motion and second, all in favor?
it. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, is there anything else that's critical that we approved tonight?
I think we got all the approval stuff done.
Okay, seeing none, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Motion and second by Councilman Bear, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. We'll pick up on,
I tried, Ryan.
Oh, did good. One thing, 4th of July celebration.